Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Empty Cloud Monastery. So we're here for the evening monk chat with Ayavan Lanyani, Bhante Sumita, and myself, Bhante Sudaso. So this is your chance to ask all of your questions related to Buddhism, and the three of us will do our best to give answers. So far, we have no questions, which means this may be the shortest monk chat to date. So it may be hello and goodbye. So if you want the monk chat to persist, this is a great time to put in some questions. We could also take questions from the in-person audience here at the monastery.
Sure, I have a question.
Go ahead.
It's kind of a personal question. Were there any challenges when you were on the way to becoming a monk, or when you are a monk? Something that was like really hard, and how did you end up dealing with that?
Those are kind of two different questions. So on the way to becoming a monk and then after becoming a monk. Those are two rather different questions. Which one would you like us to answer first?
I guess like in the process of becoming a monk.
Okay. Ayavan Lanyani, would you like to start?
Okay. So, so I actually had 3 ordinations. My first ordination was as a Burmese nun. This is called a Sayadaw. This is a nun who is keeping 8 precepts or sometimes 10 precepts. So doing that was really, really easy. So there were no challenges, but becoming a bhikkhuni, a fully ordained nun, is really, really difficult. So finding a place to do that, finding a place to train, finding a place that will give you ordination is still very challenging, I think, especially in the Western countries. In Sri Lanka, it's not that difficult, but for me, that was a huge challenge. So yeah, I was traveling around quite a bit, going to different places. I was in Australia for a while, I was in Europe for a while, and finally I got ordained in California. So getting to know the teacher, spending time with the teacher, and then there are all sorts of legal problems also. You need to get a visa, that's difficult, and finding a person that you're comfortable with, that you want to train with, and a community that accepts you and a community where you feel comfortable, so where everything matches, is not that easy, I think. So, and for women, we don't have that many choices because we have very, very few places only. So for me, taking bhikkhuni ordination was very difficult, but my first 2 ordinations, Sayadaw ordination and Samaneri ordination, were really easy. Yeah.
Okay. And we have some questions coming in online now. So Carolyn asks, how to tame anger when hurt? Bhante Sumita, would you like to answer this?
When anger happens, it definitely can burn you. It can hurt you. First, it will hurt you, and then it might hurt the others too. So it can be very, very disastrous. It can happen like different and difficult situations because of that. So when you are hurt, that means you also have ego problem. That also is why you feel hurt. And if you can also radiate loving kindness to first yourself, heal down yourself first. It's important that you feel peaceful within, and before reaching out to others. And yeah, hurting means you have taken it, you have accepted it. Once a Brahmin came to the Buddha and he started yelling at the Buddha. He was scolding the Buddha. He kept on yelling at him, and the Buddha kept quiet. And then he was, after a while, the Buddha asked, what happens, Brahmin, if you asked some of your friends for a party? So what do? I prepare food for them. Okay, so you prepare food, everything is nicely arranged, and then what will happen if none of them take the food? Then none of them accepts the food. then I'll have to eat myself. I don't want to um, remove those food. So yeah, so in that case, whatever you said to me, you have to accept yourself, because I'm not going to accept them. So like it is the way you react to that situation. If someone hurts you, it's only when you accept it, you become hurt. If you don't accept it, you don't get hurt, right? So it is the way you, how you react to that situation, that will become the problem. And how to tame anger when it hurts. Yes, I think one way is to think that impermanence. Everything is impermanent. We don't live forever. And what is the point in having hatred burning inside and outside all the time? What is the point in having enemies during this short time of our lifetime? So it's better to think that way, and not to have enemies or unfriendly beings with you, around you. And it is also how you categorize them. If you feel like you have enemy or you have unfriendly being, it is the way you judge. And if you don't judge that person as an unfriendly being or an enemy, then it's fine. So first think of that way, and shortness of life, impermanence, and uncertainty, uh, all these things will definitely help. Buddha said in Dhammapada, Nahi verena verani sammanti dha kudachana averena cha sammanti esa dhammo sanantana. Hatred is never appeased by hatred. Hatred is appeased only by non-hatred. This is an eternal law. In the same Dhammapada, Ayamakavaga, Buddha also said, we don't live forever. And people who quarrel fight because they forget that they live a very short life. Those people who know that their life is short, thereby their quarrels will appease. So I think it is a good way to think, and don't allow the anger to overtake you and destroy your inner peace.
Thank you, Bante. And next we have a question from Dinko, who asks, what's the difference between Chitta, Vinyana, and Mano? Ayavim Linyani?
I think you should take this question. You haven't taken a question yet.
Okay. So first off, the easiest one to answer here is Vinyana. So Vinyana, what we commonly translate in English as consciousness. Vinyana in the suttas most commonly is used to refer to sensory awareness. For example, Chakku Vinyana is visual awareness of a visual world. Sota Vinyana is auditory awareness, and so on, up to and including Mano Vinyana, so awareness of mental experience, awareness of mental objects and mental phenomena. So there are a couple of places in the suttas where Vinyana is used in a somewhat obscure way, which some scholars think is talking about a more universal consciousness, but this is a controversial point. So I'm not going to go into that. For one thing, it would take quite a while to explain both sides of the controversy. But briefly speaking, the easiest answer is that Vinyana seems to almost always refer to domains of sensory awareness. So visual awareness, auditory awareness, and so on. Chitta and Mano are almost identical. So they both have the meaning of mind. And in the suttas, they're used almost interchangeably. Is there anywhere in the suttas which draws any distinction between Chitta and Mano? I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're pretty much the same thing. Aya, can you think of anything? Anywhere where Chitta and Mano are used differently?
No, I think you're
Okay.
you're right.
Yeah, there's Bhikkhu Bodhi wrote a short article talking about these 3 words. And I remember he did say that there's a very subtle difference between Chitta and Mano, but that they're almost always interchangeable. Yep. Next, Bobby says, do you find it helpful memorizing the endless lists of Buddhism? Aya?
I actually like memorizing stuff. I like memorizing entire suttas. So I've memorized quite a few suttas from the Majjhima Nikaya and from the Samyutta Nikaya. And I like to chant them in English. And for me, it's very inspiring to have the Dhamma in my head instead of having it in a book. So it's always with me. And the lists, I think the lists, they're just really helpful as summaries. So if you don't want to memorize an entire sutta, then you just memorize the lists, and then you have the most important Dhamma points there. So you know that you're not forgetting anything important. And for example, if you do a meditation and you're doing something more on a contemplative side instead of doing Samadhi practices, more like a Vipassana practice, then you can go through the different lists that you've memorized, the different points, and reflect on them and see if you can actually experience them in your meditation. And the lists are really helpful because if you know there are 4 points on your list and you only remember 3, then you know you forgot something. So you can go back and refresh your memory. And if you don't have a list, if you just like try to memorize it from a text, then it's very easy to forget stuff. So I think actually the lists are really, really helpful. And to me, it's really very inspiring to memorize them.
Okay, thank you. And next, there's a question addressed to me. So Gita says, what if a monastic is teaching a Dhamma incorrectly in a class of 25 to 30 people? What can we do? There were 3 students who questioned the monk further, but he stuck to his view. It was about the arupa mind states. The Venerable insisted that arupa beings had subtle bodies. Is this your understanding? Should one just stay quiet in such a situation? Well, I think that to some extent it depends upon the severity of the wrong view that's being presented. So in this, I mean, debates about the nature of beings in the formless heavens is actually pretty insignificant. For one thing, we're not even trying to get to those states of beings as Buddhist practitioners. We're trying to attain Nibbana, which has nothing to do with the arupa states of being. So whether or not they have bodies is actually somewhat irrelevant to our practice. So it is my understanding that arupa beings, as the name implies, they have no bodies. So arupa literally means no body. So it follows that an arupa being would have no rupa, no body. But again, this is a relatively minor point. If the person was up there saying something like, greed is not an obstacle to awakening, or saying that celibacy is not helpful on the path or something like that, if like a really serious wrong view, then I think it's good to say something. But you also need to be sensitive to context as to whether it's actually worth speaking up or not, whether it's going to do any good. Sometimes the way to speak up is to say, well, I've heard other monks say such and such. What are your thoughts on this? Or why do you have a different viewpoint on this? But it's good to be respectful. And sometimes actually the right thing is just to be quiet. Maybe talk with the other students later if you feel the need. Ask the monk directly later on. Say that you were surprised about what they were teaching and you've heard different teachings from other sources. Sometimes it's not really worth making a big fuss in public about these things. And when you get to the more subtle, abstruse points of Dhamma, then there are different opinions and different monks will express different opinions. But when it comes to the central parts of the path, in theory, we should all be in agreement on that. So things like the Noble Eightfold Path, in theory, we should all be in agreement. I say in theory because you will still find some teachers who teach wacky things like claiming that jhana is not part of the Eightfold Path and such. So you do find some weird ideas out there. But talking about the formless states, I mean, I mostly just don't talk about the formless states because who cares? Seriously, who cares? Its relevance to our practice is almost zero. It's almost completely irrelevant. So don't really see the point in getting too caught up in these things. Those are my thoughts on the matter. Bhante, what's your thoughts? Do formless beings have bodies or no bodies?
Yeah, I think when you say arupa or formless, that means no form. So that itself answers the question. And the other thing, as Bhante said, it's better um, not to like argue too much on these things. Maybe as respectfully, not to shock the teacher uh, in the crowd, maybe, or maybe if you have ask other people, other monks also, maybe. Plus, you can also read yourself. Maybe later on, when you are confident, you can go ask that person, monk, again.
Okay. And Michael asks, do you think it's a good idea to keep a log of what arises during insight meditation? I've personally never been one to do such things. I know some people keep meditation journals, but I've never personally done such things. Do you do such things? Do you have any thoughts on this?
I have never done it, but I think meditation is a very individual experience, and everybody has to find their own path. So if this is something you feel drawn to, just experiment, see if it works, and if it works, then keep up, and if it doesn't work, then just don't do it anymore. But it may work for some people, so just see how it goes for you.
Yeah, I mean, as a general rule, that's a good guideline for meditation practice in general. Try something out. If it works, keep doing it. If it doesn't work, then consider changing your strategy. So I know a number of people who use meditation journals. It's just not something I've ever personally had any interest in. But yeah, if it helps you, then it helps you. Then Ben has a question. He says, Angulimala clearly had good karma of the past, but surely he was creating unwholesome karma, killing 999 people. Yes, that is true. Can we break our karmic debt, or do we have to be debt-free in order for Nibbana to arise? Bhante Sumita?
Can we break our karmic debt, or do we have to be debt free in order for Nibbana to arise? As long as we think we create karma, so even at the very last minute, you might create karma. So you never know when to stop. So it is better not to wait till that very moment. So Angulimala was lucky too. He had uh, the presence of the Buddha and rightly timely intervention of the Buddha. And just in case he killed his own mother, then even the Buddha couldn't have saved him. So that is why Buddha was very special. His amazing leadership and his amazing loving kindness and compassion towards those sentient beings. And on that particular day, it is said the Buddha, in his Mahakaruna Samapatti in the early morning, he saw Angulimala was probable and already had the potential to be rescued from the samsara. And it was just a matter of Buddha being intervening at that moment, just before he would have done what we call anantariya papakama, and that would have been unavoidable if he killed his own mother. So Buddha appeared in between his mother and Angulimala, and that way he could actually rescue him. the karma thing, when you already attain arahanthood, all the karma that you have done in the samsara, there are different categories of karma. Ditta Dhamma Vedaniya karma is the karma that you face during your lifetime, and Upapajya Vedaniya karma is the karma that you encounter immediately after death. That karma did not come into effect for Angulimala's case, because he already became Arahant, and there was no rebirth for him. And then Aparapariya Vedaniya karma is the karma that you can't avoid during the course of your samsara. And during this lifetime, Angulimala himself had to suffer a lot too. Like when he was going for alms round, going here and there, he would have been hurt. And even when people throw stone at birds, it would come to him and hurt him. And he would come bleeding most of the time to the temple when he was going for alms round and all. And then, but somehow he had already come out of that most important thing, like he became arahant. And after this lifetime, all the other karma would become ahosi karma. That means no more functional anymore. So that was the good luck of Angulimala. And it's also very, very inspiring to all of us. And those people who have done something wrong in the past, you don't have to worry. You still have a chance to come out of it and forget about it, and do start doing good from now onward. And that way, you will have a better karma. Unless and until you start doing something good, you try to transform yourself for the good, there will be no chance for you to escape the suffering. So don't repent over the spilt milk. Just keep working on your good karma right now, right here.
And next, Eva asks, is there any prerequisite of good health to enter monastic life? What is the good health standard? So by Vinaya, technically, no. There's no strict requirement. There are a list of optimal requirements. So you shouldn't have certain serious illnesses or debilitating diseases or such. And there's a standard list. But technically, you can still get ordained even if you have those conditions. You're just required to disclose them to the community before your ordination. And actually, during the ordination, you're asked publicly whether you have these health problems. But that's just by Vinaya. So every community will have its own standards. So many communities will only ordain people that are in good health. And the way that's defined will differ from monastery to monastery. Many monasteries have age limits. And then many monasteries don't. Many monasteries, you could be 90 years old and critically ill, and they would still ordain you. So there's a whole range of different criteria in different monasteries. So I know of a few monasteries where they're basically retirement homes for elderly Buddhists who want to spend their last few years meditating in a monastery. So they go and they get ordained and live their last few lives meditating in a monastery until they die. So there are places like that. But in the world of Western convert Buddhist monasteries, they're usually not like that. Usually the Western convert Buddhist monasteries, you have to be relatively healthy and not too old. Though the way too old is defined varies from place to place. So long story short, it depends upon the particular monastery. So that's what you would need to look into. Then next we have a question. Shadow of Label asks, when breathing, is it normal for the legs and arms to feel like it's filling with air? Aya? What do you think?
So again, I think meditation is a very individual experience. For some people, it can feel like this. For other people, it would not feel like this. Personally, I've never experienced it myself, that my legs and arms feel like they're filling with air. In some way, I mean, you can feel the breath going through your body, and it can feel like your body is expanding and contracting a little bit on a very subtle level. So maybe that is what you're referring to. I'm not quite sure. But if this is something that really bothers you, you could either try another meditation technique that doesn't focus on the breath, or you could go and speak directly to a monastic face-to-face in a private kind of setting instead of on the internet, where it's difficult to sort of properly understand what you're going through. And then you could get advice from a teacher how to deal with this.
Okay, thank you. Next, Michael asks, what are some examples of moving mind samadhi meditation? Is there a term for that practice? Well, I'm actually of the opinion that there's no such thing as moving mind samadhi practice, that if you're moving your mind around, then you will never get good samadhi. That if you're moving your mind, then you might be developing mindfulness and you might be developing some amount of wisdom, possibly. But that your samadhi will never become particularly strong, because for samadhi to become very strong, the mind has to be very still. Examples are, for example, body scanning. So slowly moving your mind through your body. That can be a way of developing mindfulness, and it can be used as a way of developing insight, but it will not develop strong samadhi. Because your mind never has the opportunity to fully settle down and focus. This is my own opinion on the matter anyway. Bhante, do you have a thought on this?
Yeah, I think moving mind and like even when you are moving, your mind can be still. For example, when you walk, do the walking meditation, although you're bodily moving, your mind is very stable. It's very important to keep the mind calm and focused. And even when you are sitting, although your body is not moving, your monkey mind can still hop around. So you still have to be very careful about that. As Bhante said, yes, this scanning thing, for example, can be helpful at the beginning. For a beginner, also maybe if you really feel tired or something, you can really focus on anapana, one-pointedness. Maybe you can try a little bit with scanning, body scanning. Maybe after that you can switch back to that one-pointedness, ekagata. So I think that those things can be helpful, yes, but not really as the mainstream samadhi development practice.
Aya, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I also was quite surprised by the phrase moving mind samadhi. So yeah, I agree. It seems like an oxymoron, where like if your mind is moving, clearly that isn't samadhi. And I also thought of like the body scanning techniques where you're actually moving your mind around, which are more considered Vipassana techniques than actually samadhi techniques. But I mean, it is definitely possible to use the body as a samadhi object. It's just that you don't move your mind around through the body, but you keep the whole body as a still object for your samadhi, and then you can use it to develop actually stillness of mind.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'm going to pronounce this Andre. So Andre asks, I wonder if generally developing a skillful understanding and awareness of possible influences of Mara could be very helpful in facing various obstacles to progressing to more freedom. Bhante, what do you think? Reflecting on the ways that Mara can influence us, is that a helpful way of helping us get more freedom?
I think yes, it can help. it can be helpful to us in many ways. Like whenever you have some difficulty, some challenge, if you think, oh, this is the Mara, so I have to work on my own, and I do not allow the Mara to come and influence me. Actually, these Maras are also our own defilements. Like, for example, those 10 Maras I explained in the suttas. Um, all of them are actually our own defilements. Kama, te patama, marasena. So kama is the first marasena. That is the sensual desires. And Dutiya Arati Uchati, the Arati is the second Mara, that is, you do not want to do good things. And so then Tatiya and Tanha, I think, and then Kupipasa, that means hunger and thirst, and then Tanha and Thinamidda and Vichikicha, all these things are uh, said to be the 10 Mara Senas, 10 Mara armies that can attack us on different frontiers. So whenever you have those difficulties, those issues, maybe think of that. Okay, this is the Mara that is influencing me, so I should not allow the Mara to overcome me. I should work on my own. Yeah, they are there, and also there is Devaputta Mara. What we last time, I think Bante Sudasu had an interesting Dhamma talk on that about the Mara concept, and we had a good discussion too. Yeah, there can be real Devaputta Mara who can also influence you. So you have to be careful not to lose your mindfulness, not to lose your concentration. The one who is losing lack of concentration, lack of mindfulness, and they are the people who can be attacked. So that way you have to work on that. Make sure that you are in the right frame of mind, and you are also maybe blessed by the Noble Triple Gem. You are practicing your sila is really, really important. That is why before going to Samadhi, that is why we need to have sila. When you have good foundation of sila, it always helps the Mara uh, not to be able to penetrate into us.
Next, Bobby asks, would weight training and similar exercises be helpful with meditation? Not directly. I mean, being relatively physically healthy can support your meditation practice because you'll have less physical problems coming up during meditation, perhaps. Also, overall, your body will feel a bit better. So when your body feels better, it's a bit easier to focus on your body. So, yeah, I mean, it's recommended to keep your body in relatively good condition, but not to be too obsessive about it, because ultimately we're not trying to have strong bodies or fit bodies. That's not the point. The point is having a healthy mind. It's training the mind to be serene and peaceful and wise. So physical exercise, sometimes it helps with practicing mindfulness of the body. Sometimes it can help with that, but not necessarily. If it was as easy as that, then the gyms would be filled with enlightened beings. But if you've been to a gym recently, you probably know that that's not the case. In fact, far from it. So clearly, exercise by itself does not produce wisdom. Yeah, so I wouldn't get too caught up in it. I think more relevant to meditation actually is a certain amount of stretching. A certain amount of stretching helps to keep especially your hips and your knees and your legs, and to some extent your back. It's good to keep those parts of your body flexible, and that will help you do long periods of sitting meditation. Yeah, weight training, not really. Don't think it has any relevance. Then Scott asks, can the Venerables comment on how they have turned strong moods around? Aya, would you like to talk about this?
Well, for me personally, the first meditation method that I learned was body scanning. And for me, that was very helpful to see how emotions are also reflected in my body through tensions, or through various feelings in the body, like physical sensations. That helped me very much also to get grounded, to not get caught up in the emotion, not get carried away. So to get more distance, to be more equanimous, and then also to be more mindful and to be able to let it go. Also, sometimes it can be helpful to find a way of expressing the emotion in a skillful way, through for some people it can be helpful to use some kind of artistic means, drawing, creative writing poetry or something like that, to get in touch with the emotion. If it's difficult for you to observe the emotion in your head, then getting it out there, getting it on paper, and then sort of being able to physically see it can be very helpful to understand better what is going on. Of course, as you get more skilled, you'll be able to observe it directly in your mental experience, and you will no longer need to go through that external process. But in the beginning, that can be very helpful for some people.
Yeah, thank you. Then Dulani asks, do you know how it is possible for a layperson at a young age to be able to memorize a lot of sutras in Buddhism? Would the ability be part of them due to performing a lot of merit in past lives? Bhante Sumita?
I think Dulani herself remembers the Dhamma Chakkapavatana Sutta too. She's very young. Yes, I think it's very, I personally feel it was very easier for me when I was very young to remember things, because our hard drive is not so full. And so it was really easier when we don't have too many things in our head to learn things by heart. So it was a pretty easy thing. Plus, yes, you need to have some kind of a sansaric habit, sansaric connection, and some kind of merits too in you. Of course, whenever you hear some chanting, we've seen very young little children uh, how they feel connected to that right away. And even in the people in the West, they also I noticed that they are also very much attracted to the chanting. So somewhere in their samsara, they also must have been familiar with those chantings. Maybe that is why they can. So it's good to learn those chantings by heart at the early age, and also you need to have some good karma too, and your enthusiasm, your commitment, your dedication, they are all important to earn good karma.
Okay, thank you. Then Bobby asks, even if I sit in a chair, my lower body is completely numb after 15 minutes, due probably to a bad back. Any advice on what I can do? Well, usually if your lower body is going numb during sitting meditation, it's usually caused by bad posture. Usually it has to do with how you're sitting rather than some inherent physical disability. On rare occasions, there actually is some physical problem that somebody has. So if it really is just a physical problem, then that would mean you can't do anything, and you just need to practice equanimity and endurance. But usually, numbness in the legs or the lower body is caused by sitting posture. So the best thing here actually is to go in person to a meditation teacher and have them look at your meditation posture and make recommendations. If you've never had a teacher give you in-person meditation posture adjustments, then you should. At least once in your life, get an experienced meditation teacher to correct your posture or give you some in-person recommendations. It's very helpful. I remember one of the first meditation retreats I was in the Japanese Zen tradition. After a couple of days, the teacher came around with a long stick. And the long stick was not for hitting people. They would line up the stick against your back, and it was a way of them checking to see how your posture was. So then they could make adjustments to how you were sitting so that your sitting posture would be better. And I found this incredibly helpful. Often we have even just like little slight like twists to our spine, or we're curving in odd ways, or we're like tilting to one side or the other, tilting forward or tilting back. And we think we're sitting fine, but the teacher can see from the outside what we're doing wrong. And they can come in and correct it or make suggestions. So I highly recommend getting a teacher to do an in-person correction. Yeah, I wouldn't jump quickly to assuming it's a physical problem unless you have very good reason to believe that. For example, if you used to be able to sit totally fine without your legs going numb, and it just suddenly started happening after a car accident, then that's a pretty good indication. But otherwise, it's usually posture related. Yeah, your legs should not be going numb during meditation. You should maintain feeling for the whole meditation period. Then Bobby also asks, how are friends similar or different in the Theravada and Mahayana paths? Not really sure what this question means.
Friends are friends. Yeah, it's. I think Theravada, Mahayana, it doesn't really matter. Friends can be full of loving kindness, full of generosity, full of well-being, right? For the others. I think I have met so many wonderful, as a Theravada monk, I have met so many wonderful Mahayana friends. They are really so full of loving kindness, very kind, very compassionate, very helpful. You can see them, wherever. It doesn't really matter. Even friends you can find in other Christian or Hindu or Islam. Those people also, we can find very good friends. It doesn't really, I don't think it matters. But yeah, there are different ways of interpreting, like Kalyanamita, Sapurisa, and all these things. I think then maybe there are little bit differences. Otherwise, spiritual friends, good friends, anyone can be.
And next we have another question from Shadow of Label asking, can people cultivate good karma in video games by being the good guy? This is an interesting question. I don't think I've ever heard this question before. So my opinion on the matter would be yes, but extremely slight. And the reason why I say yes is because although you're not doing anything that has any actual effect in the world, you are building up a mental habit of doing good things. You're building up an affinity with goodness. And similarly, if you're playing the bad guy in a video game, then that will generate some very, very minor bad karma, in that you're building up an internal affinity with doing bad things. But it's important to keep in mind that what we define as good and bad in Buddhism is not necessarily the same as what's defined as good and bad in video games. For example, the good guy in a game might be somebody who goes around killing all the bad people. But in Buddhism, we would still say that's bad. So killing people is still bad, even if you think you have a good reason to do it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the matter, but again, relatively minor, not the same as doing things in the physical world. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, basically, there are three kinds of action: bodily action, verbal action, and mental action. So what you're doing in a video game can only be mental action, and even then, it's not real. In the same way as if you were thinking about helping, let's say, a person in real life, because you know the video game isn't real. You know it's not going to have an effect on any like living being. So yeah, you can have good intentions, and of course, if you have good intentions, you create good habits in your mind. At the same time, it's also somewhat strengthening delusion. So there's always a little bit of negative karma there as well, I think.
Okay. And Eva asks, during this pandemic, could Ratana Sutta be played on nighttime till morning while sleeping? I mean, you could, but you might be better off just sleeping, to be perfectly honest. I think personally, I think that good sleep is very important. It's good to make sure you're getting plenty of sleep and that you sleep deeply and rest properly. Personally, I notice a huge difference in my meditation practice. If I'm not sleeping properly, then my samadhi is very weak. My mind is very hazy and hard to control. So I think it's important to make sure you're sleeping properly. So if playing the Ratana Sutta, maybe on low volume, if that doesn't disrupt your sleep, then maybe it's okay. But otherwise, I think it's better just to sleep well. Maybe chant the Ratana Sutta in the evening before you go to bed, and then chant it in the morning when you get up if you like. But I wouldn't recommend playing it while you're sleeping. Yeah, I think it's better just to rest. Bhante, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think in traditional Buddhist countries, we have this problem. Like a lot of people want to play the chanting because we have TV channels, we have radio channels who play all around, um, like round the clock chantings and Dhamma talk. So some people, like old people, I know, for example, my mom, she cannot sleep if she cannot hear the listen to the chanting. So it was, they have become already a part of it. But for me, if I also, like, maybe at the beginning it's okay, but if I wake up in between and then I hear it again, I can't sleep anymore. So I think it depends on too. But I personally do not recommend playing chanting while you are sleeping. You need to sleep when you sleep. That's very important too. When you are sick, or maybe you find it difficult to sleep, maybe um, there are some good effects by listening to the chantings too. But then there should be maybe a timer, or maybe someone else should help you turn that off when you sleep.
And next we have a question from Michael. Where do you think thoughts originate? Ayavam Lignani?
Well, thoughts are mind objects, so they originate in the mind. But of course, these are mental patterns. So these are habits, old habits. So because you have delighted in them previously, they keep on coming up. So it's basically your own mental actions, delighting in them or rejecting them, not wanting them to come back, which keeps on feeding them and keeps on making them come back. So I'm not quite sure if I'm properly understanding your question. If I didn't answer it, maybe you can just try to clarify it again.
And Will asks, is donating one's body after death to science, for example, a medical school at a large university, in line with the Buddhist teachings? Yeah, it can be. If you do so with the mind of compassion, so wishing for the body to be of benefit to helping other people with their health problems, then yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't see why there'd be any problem at all. So some religions have the belief that your body is an expression of your soul and that therefore the body should be handled in some particular way after death. So either that it should be buried without the body being violated in any way, or believing that the body should be cremated and the ashes scattered and so on. But in Buddhism, there's no requirement for the body to be treated one way or another. In fact, in the time of the Buddha, it was quite common for a body to just be thrown on the ground outside the village for animals to come and chew on it. And the body would just rot into the dirt. Because a body, once a person is dead, then a body is just dirt. That's all it is. It's just a bloody chunk of meat. There's no importance to it. So yeah, don't make a big deal about your body. It's not important. And yeah, after you die, then the body that you leave behind can be of great benefit to other beings. So organ donation, medical science, and so on. Yeah, these are good things to have done with your body, in my opinion. Bhante, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think if you can donate your body for medical school, the students there can explore into your body, and they will learn a lot of things, and that will be helpful for the other people too. Plus, your relatives, living relatives, save a lot of money. uh, that also is a benefit, and your good intention is really important. And I remember, like in Sri Lanka, some people even donate the bodies to the meditation centers. So the monks can watch how the body decays, and so that also is a way. It's very important how the body decomposition. What do you call it? Decomposes. So the process is very important. So the monks also know everything about how long it takes and what kind of color it takes, and how different stages of body decaying happens. They are pretty knowledgeable about that because they have seen it. I know, like, there are some caves where there is the glass, and inside you can see the body, and it decays, and so they keep meditating on it. And even monks go to those what do you call mortuaries, and they see the bodies everywhere. It is when the body is taken to the coffin, and it is also with so much makeup, and it looks like a real person. But if you go to the mortuary, you can see inside out, and it's totally a different world. So I think it's also good to go see. You need to definitely have some good, strong mind. And but the monks go and see that, and it's also good for their personal practice.
And Dinko asks, are Sankhara and Vinyana independent origination the same Sankhara and Vinyana of the 5 aggregates? Ayavim Lanyani.
So in some way, yes, and in some way, no, I think. Depending on how you understand dependent origination, obviously, there are different interpretations. In some interpretations, this explains the rebirth process over 3 lives. And then this explains how a new life arises because of your sankhara. And how the rebirth happens from life to life. So these are obviously sankharas that you have generated before in previous lives. So you could say that they are the same as in the 5 aggregates. But I think not every subtle sankhara can generate a new life. So some sankharas are more stronger than others, and some sankharas are more prominent than others. So if for example, you have committed for example, you have killed your mother or killed your father, then that is such a strong sankhara, such a strong karma, that will take precedence over everything else and will lead you to a rebirth in a hell realm in your immediate next life. So that would take precedence over any other sankhara that you would have generated before at any point in time. So there are definitely different kinds of sankharas. And that sankhara then generates the vinyana of the next life. But I think I gave a very bad explanation, so maybe someone else also wants to try.
Well, I think that, as Vinyana said, there's a lot of different interpretations of dependent origination. So it's difficult to give a single categorical answer to this sort of question. And my thought on it is that sankhara in the context of dependent origination is very broad. Whereas sankhara in the context of the five aggregates seems to be talking specifically about mental objects or mental activities. But on the other hand, technically all phenomena are mental phenomena. So in that sense, all sankharas are mental sankharas. Yeah, honestly, I think if we talk about this question, we'll be here for 3 hours. So I think we can rest on your answer and move on. Otherwise, we'll be here for a very long time. Then Ben asks, Vipassana is often referred to as the 9th jhana. This doesn't seem technically correct, as insight can arise at various stages in meditation. Thoughts? Well, first off, in the suttas, there is no 9th jhana. So the suttas normally give 4 jhanas, which are progressively deepening stages of concentration. Then after that, there's the 4 formless attainments, which are states of samadhi in which the body disappears or seems to disappear. And you have the experience of being just a mind focused on particular abstractions. And there is also in some suttas, there is mentioned a state called Nirodha Samapatti, the attainment of cessation, usually called Sanya Vedayata Nirodha, so the cessation of perception and feeling. But that, although it's a state of samadhi, it's a state of samadhi which is only possible if the mind has no sensual desire at all. Which means it's only accessible to non-returners and arhants. There's a few suttas where attaining the cessation of perception and feeling seems to happen simultaneously with becoming a non-returner or an arhat. So it does seem to be the way it goes for some people, perhaps practitioners who are more samadhi-oriented. But it's not accurate to call that the 9th jhana. That's not correct. And vipassana means wisdom or insight or clearly seeing reality. And I would not call that the 9th jhana. I would not call it any jhana at all. The term vipassana can either refer to a mental quality, so this mental quality of clear wisdom, or it can refer to the practices and exercises that we do, particularly during meditation, in order to produce that clear wisdom. And of course, having strong samadhi is very important for developing deep wisdom. But I would say, no, it is not correct to say that vipassana is the 9th jhana. So I don't know who says that or what they mean by it, but to me it doesn't sound correct. Bhante, do you know anything about this?
I think that is why it is very dangerous sometimes to follow certain teachers, and there can be a lot of people who distort the Dhamma, and they give their own interpretations to even the concepts and philosophies. So you also have to be very careful in following a teacher. You have to do some research before following any particular Dhamma teacher too. There are many people who might end up leading you to michaditi, wrong view.
And next, Malcolm says, I'm currently in a situation where I decided to create space between me and a friend. I was having a hard time practicing wide speech with him. Now there's enmity from his side. I actually am at peace with my decision, but I don't want there to be bad blood between us. What do you recommend? Aya?
Well, obviously every situation is different, and I don't know your particular situation. I don't know how you created the space between you and him, or between you and them. I don't know if he's male or female or something else. So if that was done in an unskillful way, maybe you had something to do with the enmity, but obviously it could also very well be that they are just generally unhappy about the separation and it had nothing to do with you. Sometimes it's good if you can just talk to them one last time, try to explain that you need a little bit of space, and it has nothing to do with you rejecting them, or you not liking their personality or anything, but it's just that you just need a little bit of time for yourself. So explaining what you're doing could be very helpful for them to understand what's going on. On the other hand, if that is a really toxic person, it's always good to protect yourself and to, as the Buddha says in the Mangala Sutta, keep away from fools and keep with the wise people. So it's good to make a decision not to associate too much with people who are really toxic for you. So it really depends on the situation, and it's difficult for me to really say what is the situation. But if you can try to explain to them what you're doing, why you're doing this, and make them understand that it's not a criticism of them, maybe it will help a lot to alleviate the enmity and to just also, allow them to let go of you a little bit, and for them to also create the space that you're trying to create for yourself, to allow them to create space also for themselves, and just, avoid misunderstandings between the two of you.
Okay. And that's the last of the questions from online. Are there any questions from the live audience here? No? So if there's no more questions, then that might be it for the evening. So of course, if you, here's another question, just in time. Gurgel asks, ever since I've increased my meditation time and frequency, it seems like music sticks to my mind much more. Would you please share your thoughts on this? Yes, stop listening to music. This is really, really important. If you want to have good meditation, don't listen to music, ever, at all. I mean, sometimes you can't help it, and like you're walking down the street and somebody drives by with music blasting from their car windows, so you can't avoid it in that case. So in that case, practice restraining your mind. So just try to stay focused on your body and don't direct your mind towards the music. But yeah, as to the experience of music seeming to stick in your mind more since you're meditating more likely is that you're recognizing how often music sticks in your mind. More likely is you're becoming more aware of how invasive and intrusive meditation is in your mind. I think that's more likely than there actually being a problem. I mean, it could also be that when you hear music, since hopefully you've been cutting down on your music listening, as I keep recommending, maybe when you hear music, you're focusing more intently on it. Maybe there's more craving and attachment going on, so it goes deeper into your mind. That's possible. In which case, practice sense restraint. Again, avoid music, and when you do hear it, don't focus on it. Put your mind somewhere else. And during meditation, really make sure that you don't reify that noise. Make sure you're not building up that noise within yourself. Try to really meditate intently. Yeah, I mean, I never, ever have music stuck in my head when I meditate, ever. it makes such a huge difference. When you stop listening to music, then it stops infesting your mind. So that's what I recommend.
You can replace music with chanting.
Yes. Yeah. Then Ben says they're asking for a friend. I still have attachment to a pre-injury sitting position, which was very simple. How important is it to be able to sit in a simple way without much support for the body? Bante?
Pre-injury sitting position. So it's very simple. How important it is to be able to sit in a simple way. I think if you have difficulty in sitting in a particular position because of your injury, then you have to give priority to your injury because it might aggravate more if you try to sit with the same position. Sitting comfortably, we say settle on your seating, and then also sitting comfortably is all the more important. If it aggravates your pain or injury, then you won't be able to focus on your meditation. So I think it's important. Sometimes people get injured and they can sit. Maybe you can stand and do the meditation. Some people can walk, do walking meditation too. Even lay down is fine if you can do that. And sitting is really important and very powerful, but sitting also has its own challenges, especially people who are not used to meditate with sitting posture. Then they have to keep working on that. So I recommend you you think of your meditation posture. If you have injury getting more aggravating or paining, then you better think of another different kinds of posture or maybe a support so that you can sit more comfortably.
Yeah, what comes to mind for me was during, I think it was possibly the first meditation retreat I ever participated in. I remember there was one person there who had this mountain of cushions. So this mountain of cushions, like propping up the arms and propping up the knees and propping up the legs and propping up the back. And I remember looking at this and thinking, like, pathetic. Pathetic. That person is clearly addicted to luxury and comfort. But then after the meditation retreat, I found out that they had just been in a terrible skiing accident, and that this was the only way that they could sit. And then that totally switched my mind, and I was like, this is actually really impressive. That even though this person had recently had this terrible skiing accident, one, they still went to a meditation retreat. And two, they were able to find a way of arranging cushions so that they could sit in something approaching a standard meditation posture. So that shift in perspective changed my attitude from one of not very wholesome to actually a very respectful and appreciative attitude towards the person's sincerity. So when you're dealing with physical injuries, you just do the best that you can, and be realistic with what your body is actually capable of. Then Alex has a question. Do political leaders in Sri Lanka follow Buddhist principles in their actions more often than they go against those principles? So I don't follow Sri Lankan politics. So I think
you have to ask the question from them because we don't know uh, what they really know and what they really do. And yeah, everyone can have different political motives, and yeah, some very good people are there. Good political leaders can be there everywhere. So maybe if Buddhism has been practiced by those leaders, their political career also can be, more enlightened with those practices. I think, but after all, politics is politics. They can always have difficulties in tune with the ethics. So I don't know if they can follow all these things. But in Buddhism, we also have something called Dasaraja Dhamma, and there are some code of conducts for the rulers, and there are many wonderful teachings in Buddhism, like Satta Aparihaniya Dhamma. They are also very important practices for political leaders, and yeah, some of those things are really important. Many teachings are there in Buddhism too. If you turn to be a political leader, maybe you follow them. That will be a great help for yourself and also to your citizens, wherever you are.
Okay, thank you. And next, the Ultimate Blitz asks, can any type of music ever be used as an object of meditation? Or just more monotonous / predictable forms like chanting? Or is chanting just not looked at as music in a Buddhist context? Aya, what do you think?
So my personal opinion is that music is not helpful for meditation. Because really what you want to do is make your mind still. So any kind of agitation, any kind of movement in the mind isn't going to be helpful. If you are very new to meditation and your mind is really crazy and very, very agitated, sometimes it can be beneficial for real beginners to listen to a little bit of calming music before they sit down and meditate. But once your mind gets more peaceful, that will not be helpful. For chanting, it really depends. If you understand the meaning of the chanting, you can use that as a Vipassana object, for example. Again, if your mind is very agitated, it can help to calm you down a little bit because the chanting is quite monotonous usually. But for some people, they also find it very distracting. So it really depends on the person. I personally like silence when I meditate.
And that's the end of the questions. So if there's nothing else, then that might be it for today. So that looks like everything for now. So thank you all for participating. If you're in New Jersey this weekend and you'd like to come and visit the monastery, you're welcome to come for our weekend programs. So outdoors with proper safety protocols in place. Otherwise, please keep an eye on our live streams. So there's two live streams tomorrow, and of course our regular Wednesday, Thursday, Friday happening next week. So hopefully we'll see you all in the near future. So we'll end the evening with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.